Hello and welcome back to Viper Bites Primetime Previews. This is the last episode in this series for this season, and we are off to Los Angeles, right to Hollywood, for the Bengals and the Rams Super Bowl LVI coming at you here. We got the Cardiac Cats there in the Cincinnati Bengals. We got whose house? Rams house. Oh boy, this is going to be exciting here. Now, listen, before we go any further, before we dive into the tail of the tape, take a second, give a good old-fashioned thumbs up, rate and review us. Make sure you listen to us on Stitcher, on Apple, on Spotify, you name it, that's where we're at. And make sure to subscribe to the Vipers channel here on the YouTube. Now, let's get right into this. The Bengals are heading to the Super Bowl for the third time in franchise history and the first time since 1988. The first two times weren't very good, facing off against the San Francisco 49ers on both occasions. Well, the 49ers aren't here, but the team that beat the 49ers is, and that's the Rams. Now, with wins over the Raiders, the Titans, and the Chiefs, the Bengals have to be feeling good, and they've been getting the job done thanks to Joe Burrow and getting all his weapons involved. Cincinnati is 7-3 this year on the road, 2-0 in the playoffs with wins in both Kansas City and in Tennessee. Now let's dive a little bit deeper here into Joe Burrow himself. In 2021, he threw for 4,611, which ranked him sixth as far as yards are concerned. 34 touchdowns versus only 14 interceptions with a passer rating of 108.3. The 108.3 passer rating, that trailed only Aaron Rodgers amongst quarterbacks with more than 400 attempts. Now, I will point out that teammate Tyler Boyd, wide receiver, led the team in passer rating with a 118.8 pass. So there is that, which really means absolutely nothing. I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. Now, we all know the Rams want to get to Burrow like the Titans did. But against the Chiefs, Joe Cool, so to speak, Joe Burrow, he had a little bit different of a thing going on. Burrow was 14 of 19 on quick passes, with both of his touchdowns coming as a result of that quick passing game. Now, when we dive a little bit deeper into that, on the season, Burrow had averaged 8.9 yards per attempt. But in that AFC Championship game, knowing the Chiefs wanted to get pressure on Joe Burrow, that yards per attempt, that kind of dipped to 6.6. Now, Burrow, he was sacked more than any other quarterback in the regular season, going down 51 times. The Rams, they got to the quarterback 50 times, which was the third most. And you know what? They did some pretty other good things, like getting to the pressure there through the blitzing, 11th in the league when it came to blitz pressure percentage. Now, Burrow, to his credit, when facing the blitz, he is 13th with a 100.7 rating on the season, and his third versus pressure with a 94.6 rating. But the postseason, it's been a little bit of a different story for the Bengals signal caller there, as against the blitz, that number has dipped to the 80s, and against pressure, that mark has actually gone down to about 40 as far as rating is concerned. Now, Burrow has thrown picks in back-to-back games, which seems meaningless until you realize the Rams defense has forced a turnover in 10 straight contests, which is something you need to be keeping an eye on in this one. Now, rushing. Rushing has not been a premium here in the postseason so far. But Joe Mixon, for all that you want to get into, leads the way with 190 yards in 3 games, averaging 63.3 yards per game. On the season, 292 attempts, 1,205 yards, 13 touchdowns, 4 yards per carry. Now, the only players averaging more yards per game than Joe Mixon in the playoffs are Josh Allen, quarterback, 67 per game, and Josh Jacobs, who the Bengals defeated in the first round of the playoffs, who had 83 yards in that contest. Mixon put up 88 yards on 21 carries versus the Chiefs. That's 4.2 on the ground in the AFC Championship. Now, during the postseason, he's also added 13 receptions for 105 yards in the passing game, including 51 passing yards, or receiving yards, so to speak, coming against the Titans. Now, back to that AFC Championship game. The Bengals deployed that quick hitter style, which I kind of mentioned there. I would expect to see a lot of that against the Rams here. Now, the Bengals backs saw 7 targets in the passing game, completing the process on 6 occasions for 70 yards with that Samaje Perine touchdown in that game. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Is there a better trio in the NFL when it comes to pass catchers? Well, we can talk about that here a little bit later when we get into the Rams, because they got a formidable trio themselves. But these have been the top options for Burrow through 3 playoff games. That's Higgins and Chase. Boyd has been kind of quiet. Now, Chase is averaging 93 yards per game with 20 receptions, 27 targets, accumulating 279 yards along the way with a single touchdown. As for Higgins, he has yet to score, but he has caught 14 of 23 targets for 209 yards, including 103 yards on 6 catches against the Chiefs when they limited Jamar Chase to 54. Now, Tyler Boyd, he has not been looked at often here so far in the playoffs. He could be the real X factor for me. This feels like a low-key Tyler Boyd moment coming up in the Super Bowl. Now, he does have a touchdown to his credit in the postseason on one of his 10 grabs, and it just feels like he is this forgotten part of this Bengals offense. Heck, we've been talking more about CJ Uzomah or whether or not he is playing, and if Drew Sample can step up into his role more than we've been talking about Tyler Boyd. The disrespect on Tyler Boyd needs to stop now, and I think he's going to have a more surprising game than people are giving him credit for here in the Super Bowl. Now, the Rams are making their 5th trip in the Super Bowl, and this makes back-to-back years in which the hosting city has made the Super Bowl and gained that home field advantage. Now, maybe they need to start holding the Super Bowl in Dallas so no team ever has the home field advantage, but that's for another show, another day. I watched the NFC Championship game. The Rams will need to find a way to get to Joe Burrow and limit what he can do. When we talk about I watched that NFC Championship game, that really did not turn into much of a home field advantage for the Rams. There was about half and half. There's a lot of 49ers faithful in Southern California for that contest. So maybe the Bengals, maybe they show up in droves. But anyway, back to Joe Burrow and how the Rams need to limit both him and Jamar Chase. Luckily for them, we mentioned the 49ers just a second ago. We mentioned Chase and what he can do when it comes to the passing game here. I'll get into more of that back because when we talk about Jamar Chase, it's not just about the yardage. It's about the yak, the yards after the catch. He was as good as any wide receiver when it came to yards after the catch. And the Rams, they faced off against Deebo Samuel 3 times this season, one of the best yak men in the game. Now, in that NFC Championship, the Rams did limit Deebo Samuel to 4 for 72 and 1 touchdown. Yeah, 72 yards were there, but 4 receptions is what they were able to limit him to. Los Angeles, they are 7-3 at home this year, including wins over Arizona and San Francisco. And in the postseason, I know we're going to be saying this 100 times between now and kickoff. This game is in the Rams' backyard. So that 7-3 home record, 2-0 in the playoffs, that's going to be up for grabs, up for debate as we move along. Now for the Rams, trading for Matthew Stafford has paid off. Happy birthday, Matthew. We love birthday tutties over here, and it's going to be interesting to see if his birthday week continues on to next Sunday. Now, it's been interesting also this season as Stafford's production has had its ups, its downs, its peaks, and its valleys. Through the first 8 games of the season, Stafford was as good as any quarterback in the National Football League. The next 9 games, not so much. He had a little bit of a turnover problem. So here in the postseason, we have gotten good Matt Stafford so far. He is averaging 301 yards per game, completing 72% of his passes, while his passer rating sits at about 115.6, and he has thrown for 906 yards with 6 touchdowns and only 1 interception. If the Rams continue to protect Matthew Stafford and keep him clean in the pocket, this is what he can do to teams. Okay, now the other flip side here is Stafford has turned the ball over this season, and he's a 64.4 rating versus pressure, which is 20th in the National Football League. If the Bengals get pressure with 4-man fronts, 3-man fronts, this could be a problem for the Rams. Now, against San Francisco last week, Stafford threw for 337 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also threw a pick. He should have been 2 picks, let's be honest, and finished with a 96.3 rating while being hit 9 times. Fun fact, with 315 passing yards, Matthew Stafford would finish the playoffs with more passing yards in a single season than, let me rephrase this. Let me get back up here a bit. With 315 passing yards, Matthew Stafford would finish these playoffs with more passing yards than anyone else in NFL history. His 905 yards currently sits 22nd and trails Eli Manning's 2011 playoff record of 1,219 passing yards. Now, let's talk about the running game for the Rams here. Cam Akers, Sony Michel. I mentioned earlier this postseason has not been kind to backs. Akers leads the Rams with 151 yards on the ground, averaging a dismal 2.8 yards per carry on 54 attempts. Good news, Rams, they're still willing to run the ball with Akers. And if you're looking at the 2022 outlook, Akers seems to be the man. Now, Akers has a chance to make a difference in this one as a pass catcher, more so than maybe as a runner. We know the receptions aren't quite there, but the big playability has been there. And this is a thing that you could take advantage of. You know the Bengals have a good Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson. They're going to be there. But I think Akers' athleticism gives him a slight advantage in the passing game coming out of the backfield. Now, we don't have to look any further than what he did against Arizona. He had that big 40-yard reception. He had another one called back due to a penalty there. So we know Akers can get involved that way. As for Michel, he's averaged 3.3 yards per carry for 78 yards. And if we look at the Bengals' rush defense, they are a team that doesn't blitz. They usually bring 3 or 4, meaning teams can get to the second level. And that's just what Kansas City did in that AFC Conference Championship, averaging 5.8 yards on the ground against this Bengals team. Now, we talked about all the pass catching options in Cincinnati. Well, if you throw Akers in there, you've got Cooper Kupp, you got Odell Beckham Jr., you got Van Jefferson, you potentially have Tyler Higbee, you've got Blanton, you got pass catchers all over the place for the Los Angeles Rams. And Cooper Kupp, he continues his assault on the passing game records here in the postseason. His postseason numbers, they may be even better than what his regular season numbers were. In the regular season, you take away his 16 touchdowns, and he still would have been the wide receiver too, thanks to 145 receptions, 1,947 yards. That worked out to 114.5 yards per game. That is insane. In 3 playoff games, though, here we go. You ready for this? In 3 playoff games, Kupp has registered 386 yards on 25 receptions. And that, my friends, is working out to 128.7 yards per game. I did the math. Trust me, it's correct. And he has 4 touchdowns in those 3 contests. As for the other pass catches for the Rams, Odell Beckham Jr. has 19 catches on 23 targets for 236 yards, with 113 of those coming in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. And like the Bengals, Tyler Boyd, Van Jefferson is the forgotten man in LA, and he possesses all kinds of big play potential, ready to pop off at any moment. At the tight end position, again, we know there's concerns with CJ Uzomah for the Bengals. There's also concerns for Tyler Higbee, as he is questionable for this contest. Then again, I'm questionable every morning when I get up. Now, the Rams are not too worried here because they've got another guy named Kendall Blanton who stepped up in his absence last time, catching 5 passes for 57 yards on 5 targets. In the playoffs, he has 7 for 75. I mean, Kendall Blanton, he can get the job done if Tyler Higbee is not there. If he's there, that's just something else the Rams have going for them. Now, what am I watching for in this contest? Well, let me tell you, there's several things I'm keeping an eye on. It's a battle in the trenches. Which defensive line can get to the quarterback? Can the combination of Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, and Aaron Donald totally take over for the Rams? Can the Bengals get pressure with 4 guys there, with Hubbard and Hendricks and Reeder? Can these guys get pressure on Matthew Stafford without blitzing? Something I'm watching there. Another thing I'm watching is Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey. You pay a corner big-time money for big-time games, and while Jamar Chase isn't a kicker, Ramsey loves to trash talk them kickers. This is must-see TV. Ramsey won't necessarily shadow Jamar Chase all over the field, but when crucial plays come up in this, I expect this matchup to amp it up a few degrees. Now, Chase doesn't need much room to make something happen. I talked about his yak yards. He's one of the best in the game. Now, speaking of another yak man, Cooper Kupp versus Awazi, or whatever you want to say his name is. It doesn't matter who you put on Cooper Kupp. Look at Kupp's last 2 games here in the playoffs. 140-plus receiving yards. Come again? 140-plus receiving yards in each of the last 2 games. Now, Cincinnati obviously knows they need to make him a priority number 1. Heck, he has 90 or more receiving yards in 18 of 20 games this year. Cincinnati, good luck trying to solve that one because no one else has been able to solve Cooper Kupp all season. Number 4, the 4th thing I'm watching here, right tackle Rob Havenstein versus Trey Hendrickson or Sam Hubbard. Havenstein has allowed 7 sacks this season, which is the most of any Rams offensive lineman. And if there is a weakness on that offensive line, it is on the right side. So look for the Bengals to attack Havenstein when they get an opportunity to do so. The 5th thing I'm watching, Joe Burrow and the Cardiac Cats. If the Bengals get down and we start to count them out, can they come back once again. And while the Rams have takeaways in 10 straight contests, the Bengals have 2 takeaways in each of the last 3 games. Now, the sixth thing, yes, there's 6 things I'm watching here. And this one's key because this goes before the game. I need to know this before the game takes place. What Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp had for breakfast, and did they share from the same plate? Because this could be big things for the Rams offense. Now, my prediction, can the student become the master? Will Zach Taylor get the best of Sean McVay? McVay, Taylor, they combined for like 74 years of age, which is basically the equivalent to one Pete Carroll. Yeah, okay, Pete Carroll's 70, but you get where I'm going. Sean McVay's last Super Bowl performance didn't go so well. And for me, this game comes down to pressure. Under pressure. On both sides of the ball. For the Bengals, Hubbard, 2 sacks, 5 pressures versus the Chiefs. We know Hendrickson, we know Reeder. They can get after the quarterback, and they need to pressure Stafford. They got to Patrick Mahomes 4 times and 5 hits in the AFC Championship with only rushing 3 to 4 guys. If the Bengals have to blitz Matthew Stafford will beat them, as evidenced all season long with a 139 passer rating against the blitz. For the Bengals, protecting Burrow has to be their top priority. I know I said shutting down Cooper Kupp, but if you can't get the ball out of your hands, you need to, you're done. It's not going to work. And Los Angeles has some of the best pass rushers available to him with the likes of Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd. That trio has gotten to the quarterback time and time again. Von Miller has 7 sacks in his last 7 games, while Aaron Donald has 7 sacks in his last 8. If the Rams dominate the trenches like the Titans did against the Bengals, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a different story than what we've seen in Tennessee. This Rams offense is much more, it's better than what we've seen with Tennessee. Stafford is better than Ryan Tannehill. This Rams offense will not allow the Bengals to get back into it. They will score when they are given an advantage. Now, when Stafford is playing well, the Rams are unbeatable. Literally, they are 11-0, playoffs included, when Stafford's rating is over 100. For the Bengals, it comes to Burrow getting the ball out quickly, throwing some bubble screens, throwing some slants, getting that draw play. Getting Joe Mixon involved in the passing game on those short passes is going to be key here. Now, with all that being said, everything I've dropped there, I am still taking the Rams in this one, 30-24. The Rams go back to the Super Bowl. They win it one more time. And back-to-back years, the host city has themselves a champion. Now, hey, before you go any further, if you're still watching this, head over to fantasypoints.com, because before kickoff, if you go there and subscribe now, you can get 30% off that subscription. Yes, 30% off that Fantasy Points subscription. Head over there right now. Tell them Matt sent you. And again, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. And you know what? Check us out on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. We're everywhere. So make sure to check that out. We'll see you next time.